Hi, welcome to the Divorce Vault. I'm Melissa Gragg, a financial mediator and company valuation expert for over 20 years. I've also been working with women and couples to take back control of their divorce through mediation and negotiation strategies. So, here inside the vault, you'll find step by step tools you'll need to lead your own case with clarity. Whether it's creating a position statement, making a powerful settlement offer, or preparing for mediation, we're going to walk you through even getting ready for a deposition. And it's going to help you stand strong in all of these. So it's not just theory, but it's a lot of the same frameworks that I've used in real cases, but condensed into tutorials so you can stop feeling stuck, start negotiating with confidence, and ultimately anchor the deal that's right for you. So let's dive in because your story, your numbers, and your strategy are the keys to your best outcome. So, what is anchor the deal and what does it mean in divorce? Well, anchoring the deal means that you set the first number in the negotiations so that every counter offer revolves around your figure, not your spouse's. So, like in divorce mediation, the first offer isn't just math, it's a lot of psychology that goes into this. So, when you put a number or like $400,000 as the house value, your spouse and mediator automatically orient around that number. So, every concession or adjustment happens in relation to your anchor. So, if you wait, you're always chasing the other side's number, which is pretty much designed to minimize what share you get. So, by anchoring this, you turn the conversation into a response on your logic, your documentation, and your strategy. So, why should you speak first in a divorce negotiation? Speaking first lets you control the frame and shift the burden of proof to your spouse. So, a lot of times people hesitate because they think speaking first is risky. In reality, the first voice, which is your voice, is the voice of power. And so you're planting that flag, you're showing the mediator that you've done your homework and that your number is grounded in evidence. But from there, your spouse can argue, but their negotiation is against your framework. So it's kind of like chess. You move first, and then they must play around your move. And every move and every strategy is just one move at a time. Okay. So isn't it risky to make an offer before I have all the documents? No, you actually don't need perfect documentation, but you do need a credible starting point. And so if you're waiting for every document, this is how those toxic spouses are going to win. They're going to delay, they're going to hide, and they're going to stall the process. So by making an evidence-based offer, not just out of nothing, with clearly noted assumptions. So this assumes this assumption. You expose the missing information and put pressure on them to respond. So offers aren't final, they're kind of living documents. They actively change over time. So your first draft is really just a lever to move the process forward and not the last word on value. Okay. So, what is a property statement in divorce? It's sort of like the master spreadsheet that we work with of your marriage. So, every asset, every debt, and who keeps what. Think of it as your divorce balance sheet, right? So you're going to put your houses, cars, businesses, retirement accounts, pensions, loans, everything listed with the dollar value. So each one is in a certain line, and then you have a column and it's yours or theirs, right? So the totals should balance towards fairness. And so we like to talk about like putting things in a one bucket and then separating it into two. Are they even? Are they somewhat rationally equivalent? And the totals should balance towards fairness, even if you keep a lot of the different types of assets. So one person keeps the house, one person keeps the business, but you have to also have like the bank statements. And this property statement almost becomes the cornerstone or the backbone of the settlement offer. Okay, so what proof should you bring to back up your settlement offer? One clean, recent statement for every account or asset. So you don't need a mountain of paperwork. You need the key page, like the bank balance. So if there's 5 pages to the bank statement, bring the one that has the total, bring the one that has the transfer that you're concerned about. So you'll bring like the bank balance, an IRA statement, maybe a mortgage payoff. It could be a stock option summary. And what you're doing is bringing like a proof or evidence packet that mediators love, a very slim file that instantly validates your numbers, while your spouse is waving opinions around or just speaking about things. You're calmly giving evidence, moving it across the table, and that contrast kind of builds credibility and trust. So, what does anchoring with home values look like? It means that the first number on the table sets the playing field. So imagine you say the house is worth 400,000, but you have an appraisal, while your spouse says it's worth 200,000, but they have no proof. The mediator now sees your figure as more reasonable. Instead of fighting uphill to doubt their number, you've put them on the defense. And so anchoring works because human brains grab on to that first number they see. It becomes the reference point. And in divorce, that reference could mean thousands or millions of dollars. And basically, they're going to be working your number down while you are working their number up if they go first. So, what happens if your spouse already made an unfair offer? Then this is just going to require you to re anchor that deal by submitting your own documented settlement offer. So, most first offers from toxic spouses are laughably bad, like hilariously bad. Instead of rejecting it with emotion and being like, oh, how could you? You kind of pivot and you say, here's my property statement, here's my proof, my evidence, and it instantly resets the mediator's frame of reference, right? So now your spouse kind of looks weak. The offer looks less like a starting point and more like what it is, which is a really unreasonable distraction. So anchoring doesn't just work if you do the first offer, it can also work as the counter offer, but it's almost like you're just coming back with a stronger position that has more legs to it. It has more evidence, it has more things behind it that can really help. So, another question that people have when they're putting together like settlement offers and in the settlement process is, what is marital waste in divorce? It's basically when one spouse drains money from the accounts, but also it's for non-marital purposes like affairs or secret spending, addictions, things like that. So it could be like $10,000 spent on jewelry that you never saw, like you didn't receive that for Christmas. $15,000 for a vacation that you were not invited to. Maybe it was a business vacation, but it was quite a lot of money to be for one person going to a conference. So these aren't just oopsies, they're marital waste. And the fix is that you need to show the mediator before and after statements and calmly ask, where did this money go? You don't have to prove their misconduct because that gets more emotional. And then everybody's going to think, oh, well, you're concerned about the affair. You have to highlight the red flags. The burden shifts to them to justify the purchases and often exposes like really big financial truths or financial lies. And so, what this looks like is instead of doing an entire analysis for a mediation, you're pulling those single pages, right? The page that shows the purchase of the jewelry, the pages that show the spending that doesn't quite make sense. So you have to paint a picture for them before you get into proving it all. Because again, mediation is kind of like the mock trial, the beginning stages of this process. So another issue is going to be, what is the difference between marital and separate property? So marital property is typically shared, whereas separate property belongs to one spouse if they can prove it. And so premarital assets could be like inheritances. Certain gifts are typically separate, like a lot of times the ring that you received. But also there's a catch that the spouse who claims the asset is separate must also trace and prove it. So until then, assume it's marital in your offer. And this is a very strategic move that just forces them to produce the evidence and basically positions your offer at what it should be, right? The offer then forces them to not just fight blindly, but you make them carry the burden of the proof of that asset. And it could be that there's a business that was owned before the marriage, and it could be other assets, it could be inheritances, it could be a lot of different things. But the person who claims that it's separate needs to prove it. You go in with your settlement offer and just say, I'm assuming everything is marital because we gathered it all after the marriage. Okay. So, what is the valuation date and why does it matter? And the valuation doesn't just mean for businesses, it means for all of the assets on your balance sheet. So, this is like a legal snapshot of when and where the assets are going to be valued. So, usually it's going to be your trial date or it's going to be your separation date. And that's going to change depending upon what state you're in. So if your state uses the date of separation, this is kind of good. It could save you a little bit of money because it's basically freezing those values at that date. So once you determine what the value is, things aren't going to necessarily change. Now, even if it's the date of separation, there are some assets that would still flow towards the trial date. And the trial date is a moving date, and it could be delayed as well, depending upon how toxic your spouse is. So that means you're not fighting over like market swings months later. You're anchoring to that specific moment. So if it's a trial date, numbers may update over time, which could be risky depending upon if those volatile assets, securities change over time. But knowing the state and what they determine as the valuation date will let you anchor your offer with the right statements and avoid kind of nasty surprises later when they basically say, thanks, but that's the improper date. Okay, so these were just kind of the first 10 questions that will help you kind of cultivate your settlement offer. We have about 40 more or a couple other parts to this series. So we appreciate you watching. And if this video gave you some clarity, remember, it's just one piece of the process. Inside the Divorce Vault, you'll find full step-by-step tutorials, guides, and templates to build your position statement, make your settlement offer, and prep for mediation. And worst case, walk into deposition perfectly ready. So divorce isn't something that you should have to figure out alone. That's why we also built the Divorce Allies, which could be a community where you might need some help navigating through these tutorials and ask your questions. But if you need additional assistance, you can also book a one-on-one strategy session at valuationmediation.com or thedivorceallies.com.